high above the clouds, where the wind sings lullabies to the stars, and the mountains wear white hats of snow, there lived the kingdom of dragons. It was a magnificent place, a hidden world nestled between two great peaks so tall that even eagles were afraid to fly up to their tips. The dragons who lived there were magnificent creatures of every color. Crimson dragons who breathed fire as red as roses, sapphire dragons whose scales shimmered like a sunlit ocean, and golden dragons whose wings caught the light of the sun and scattered rainbows across the valleys below. Among these wonderful creatures lived a young dragon named Ember. Ember was small for his age, much smaller than the other young dragons, with round, curious eyes the color of tangerines, and scales of the most beautiful shade of forest green, like the deep heart of a jungle after fresh rain. His wings were a little too big for his body, which made him clumsy when he flew. When the other young dragons soared in perfect formation through the sky, doing loop-the-loops and spinning like pinwheels, Ember would wobble and tumble and sometimes fly completely upside down by accident. "Watch where you're going, Ember." The other dragons would laugh, but Ember didn't mind too much. He had one extraordinary gift. He could breathe the most beautiful golden fire anyone had ever seen. Not the ordinary orange-red fire that most dragons produced, but a warm, glowing, golden fire that smelled like cinnamon and honey and made everyone who saw it feel instantly cozy and happy inside. The elder dragons said it was a rare gift, a fire of friendship, not of war. One bright autumn morning, when the leaves on the trees far below were turning red and orange and yellow, the Dragon Kingdom prepared for its greatest yearly celebration, the Sky Dance Festival. Every dragon in the kingdom would gather on the highest peak and perform a grand flying display together, weaving through the clouds in a beautiful pattern, breathing fire in perfect harmony, painting the sky with light and color. Ember had been practicing for weeks. He desperately wanted to fly alongside the others without bumping into anyone. The morning of the festival, every dragon lined up at the edge of the great cliff. The elder dragon, a magnificent silver creature named Grandma Silverthorn, gave the signal with a flap of her enormous wings, and hundreds of dragons launched into the sky at once. For a brief, shining moment, Ember flew perfectly. His wings caught the wind just right. He soared upward with the others, the cold mountain air rushing past his face, the world spread below him like a beautiful painting. He could see the forests, the rivers, the tiny patchwork squares of farmland far, far below. His heart felt like it was made of sunlight, and then a gust of wind, not just any gust. A sudden, fierce, unexpected gust of wind that came roaring around the mountain like a mischievous giant. It slammed into Ember sideways with tremendous force. His big wings, always just a little too big, caught the wind like two enormous sails on a boat, and before he could do anything at all, Ember was spinning wildly through the air. "Ember!" He heard someone shout behind him, but it was too late. He spun and tumbled, somersaulted through 3 clouds, bounced off a particularly fluffy one that was shaped like a rabbit, and then with a long, terrified shriek he plummeted downward, down, 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 falling away from his kingdom, away from his family, away from everything familiar, tumbling through the white-gray sky toward a world he had never seen up close. He fell for what felt like forever, and then crashed. He landed in something soft. He opened one eye, then the other. He was sitting in the middle of a large haystack, in the corner of a small farm, surrounded by very surprised-looking chickens. The chickens stared at him. Ember stared at the chickens. "Hello," said Ember in a small, embarrassed voice. The chickens ran away screaming. Ember looked around him. He was in a valley he had never seen before, surrounded by tall trees with golden autumn leaves, a babbling little brook, rolling green meadows, and in the distance a small, cozy-looking village with stone cottages and smoking chimneys. The sky above was a wide, pale gray, with no mountains tall enough to hide his kingdom. He was completely, utterly, absolutely lost. He tried to fly upward, to look for the mountain peaks that held his home, but when he spread his wings, he felt a sharp twinge of pain. His right wing, the larger one, had been scraped badly during the fall. He couldn't fly. Not yet. For the first time in his life, Ember felt something he had never quite felt before. He felt truly, completely, heartbreakingly alone. He curled his tail around himself, tucked his aching wing close to his side, and sat very still in the red haystack as the cool autumn wind rustled through the golden trees around him. On the other side of those golden trees, in a small cottage at the edge of the village, lived a girl named Luna. Luna was 10 years old. with dark brown eyes as deep and curious as forest pools, long black hair that she always wore in a single braid with a purple ribbon, and a way of walking that was very quiet, almost like a cat, as if she didn't want to disturb the world too much. She had a small constellation of freckles across her nose that she secretly thought looked exactly like the Pleiades star cluster. She had checked with a star chart. Luna loved books. She loved the night sky. She loved collecting interesting pebbles and pressing wildflowers between the pages of old notebooks. She loved making up stories about the clouds. What Luna did not love, and what made her days feel sometimes like a gray sweater 2 sizes too big, was how lonely she was. The village children thought Luna was strange. She used words they didn't understand, like nebula and phenomenon and phosphorescent. When they played tag or kicked balls through the square, she was usually sitting by herself under the old oak tree, reading about constellations or sketching beetles in her notebook. A few times she had tried to join in, but she had tripped over her own feet during tag and accidentally let go of the ball at the wrong moment during kickabout, sending it bouncing into Mrs. Periwinkle's prize-winning rose garden. After that, the other children had mostly stopped inviting her. Her mother always said, "Luna, my star, the right friends will find you eventually." Luna hoped that was true, but eventually felt very far away. On the morning that Amber crashed into the haystack, Luna had woken up early, before the sun was properly up, and had gone to her favorite spot, a meadow just beyond the golden trees at the edge of the farm, to look for the last few wildflowers of autumn and to sketch them before the frost came and took them all away. She was crouching beside a small cluster of pale blue forget-me-nots, pencil in hand, when she heard it, a sound, not a normal farm sound. Not a cow or a chicken or the creak of a gate. This was more like a small, sad, rumbling sound. Almost like a very tiny thunderstorm happening somewhere nearby. A sound that had feelings in it. Luna stood up very slowly and listened. There it was again, coming from behind the old stone wall that separated the meadow from the farm's haystack corner. Now, most children in the village, if they had heard an unexplained rumbling noise coming from behind the wall, would have run straight back to their mothers. But Luna was not most children. Luna was the kind of girl who, when she heard something strange and unexplained, immediately wanted to know why and what and how. She walked carefully toward the wall, her boots making soft sounds in the dewy grass. She reached the wall, a tumble-down old thing with moss growing on top, and very slowly, very cautiously, she stood on her tiptoes and peered over, and she saw Amber. Now, Luna had read about dragons. She had read every single book about dragons that the village library had, which was 3 books, not counting the one with the scary picture on the cover that she had closed very quickly. She knew that dragons in books were usually huge and fierce and breathed fire in a dangerous, threatening sort of way and hoarded gold in caves. This dragon was not huge. This dragon was about the size of a large dog, with big green scales, a slightly scorched-looking tail, enormous set orange eyes, and a scraped wing that he was holding at a very awkward angle against his side. He was sitting in the ruins of the haystack, surrounded by feathers from the departed chickens, making the small, sad, rumbling sound she had heard, which Luna now realized was a dragon trying very hard not to cry. Luna stared at the dragon. The dragon, noticing he was being observed, startled violently, sent several feathers flying into the air, and made a sound like a kettle. They stared at each other for a long, frozen moment. Then Luna, because she was Luna, said the most sensible thing she could think of. "Are you hurt?" Amber blinked. He had expected screaming. He had expected running away. He had expected at the very least a concerned noise from a chicken. He had not expected a small girl with a purple ribbon in her hair and a notebook tucked under her arm to peer at him over a wall and ask in a calm, matter-of-fact voice if he was hurt. "My wing," he said quietly. His voice was a bit like a warm fire, low and soft and crackling at the edges. Luna tilted her head and studied the scraped wing with the same focused attention she gave to interesting beetles. "It doesn't look broken," she said thoughtfully. "More like a graze. Does it hurt when you spread it out?" Amber spread it cautiously. He winced. "Yes." "Then you shouldn't fly on it yet. You could make it worse." She said this with the authority of someone who had read the chapter on first aid in the big book of practical knowledge, which she had, twice. "Are you lost?" Amber's bottom lip, or what served as a bottom lip on a dragon's face, wobbled very slightly. "Yes," he admitted in a voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know where my home is." I can't fly. I don't know anyone here. He paused and added, very quietly, I'm quite frightened, actually. Luna looked at him for a long moment. There was something in his expression in those wide, sad, tangerine-colored eyes that she recognized with a sudden, sharp clarity. It was the same feeling she carried around most days, that heavy, gray, too big sweater feeling. He looked lonely. Deeply, completely lonely. Just like her, she climbed over the wall, which was not graceful, and landed with a thump on the other side. She walked up to Amber, who was at least twice her height, and stood in front of him with her hands on her hips. My name is Luna, she said. I live in the cottage by the oak tree. I have 12 books about astronomy, 4 about beetles, 3 about dragons, though I should tell you they're probably wrong about most things, and I know how to make excellent chamomile tea. I also know how to keep a secret. She looked at him steadily. I think you need a friend right now. Would you like one? Amber stared at her. No one had ever introduced themselves to him quite like that before. Yes, please, he said. Luna nodded, as if this were a perfectly reasonable transaction. Good. Then we'll start with the win. Come on, I know a place where no one will see you. Luna led Amber through the golden trees, keeping to the path she knew by heart, where the branches grew thick and low and the sunlight filtered down in long, dusty beams. Amber followed her carefully, his clumsy feet cracking every single twig in his path. You're not very quiet, Luna observed. Dragons aren't supposed to be, Amber said, a little defensively. Well, you'll need to try. If anyone from the village sees you, they'll panic. Because I'm a dragon? Amber asked sadly. Luna thought about this honestly. Probably, yes. Most people here have never seen one. They'd be frightened before they could learn that you're kind. She looked back at him over her shoulder. That seems very unfair to me. But we'll deal with that later. First, here we are. She stopped at the entrance to a small, hidden hollow in the hillside, almost entirely concealed by a curtain of weeping willow branches. Inside, the ground was soft with moss, a small spring bubbled up from the rocks and ran away into the forest, and the whole space was canopied by a ring of old trees whose branches wove together overhead like the vaulted ceiling of a cathedral. Amber ducked inside and looked around in wonder. The golden autumn light came in through the willow curtain in thin, wavering stripes, and the moss beneath his feet was springy and cool. I found it when I was 7, Luna said, settling herself on a flat rock and opening her notebook. I've never shown anyone else. She said this casually, but Amber could tell it meant something. Thank you, he said, and he meant it deeply. Over the next hour, Luna cleaned the scrape on Amber's wing with cool spring water and wrapped it carefully with strips of clean cloth she kept in her bag. She always kept a small first aid kit, because she tripped often. Amber held very still the whole time, which she appreciated. While she worked, they talked. Amber told her about the Dragon Kingdom, the Great Mountain, the Sky Dance Festival, the way clouds fell from above like cool cotton, the way his golden fire worked, how it came from feeling something warm and true in his heart. Luna told him about the village, the cobblestones, the market on Thursdays, Mrs. Periwinkle and the roses, the library with only 3 dragon books, the school where she sat at the back and no one passed her notes, the way she liked to come to this hollow at dusk and watch for the first star of the evening to appear. Which star is it? Amber asked. Venus, usually. Though people call it the evening star. It's actually a planet. She paused. Did you know you can sometimes see it even before the sky turns completely dark? I didn't know that, said Amber. But I can show you the stars from above the clouds, if my wing heals. They're different out there. Bigger. They don't twinkle, they just shine, very steadily, like tiny lights that never go out. Luna looked up at him with an expression he hadn't seen on anyone's face before, pure, delighted wonder. I would love that more than almost anything, she said softly. In the days that followed, they fell into a routine that felt as natural as breathing. Every morning before school, Luna came to Willow Hollow. She brought Amber things from her cottage, apples from the garden. Amber discovered he loved apples, especially the tart green ones, the occasional carrot, and twice as an experiment a piece of gingerbread, which he ate with his eyes closed in bliss. Cinnamon, he said happily. It smells like my fire. Luna checked his wing each morning. Every day it looked a little better. The scrape was healing, the swelling going down. He could spread it wider without wincing. In the afternoons, after school, she came back and they worked together. Luna taught Ember to be quieter on his feet, with limited success, though he did improve. Ember showed Luna how to tell the temperature of the air by the way the wind felt on the tips of his wings. Luna read to him from her books the astronomy ones and the dragon ones, the latter of which made Ember snort with laughter at how completely wrong they were. Ember, in turn, told her real things about dragons, how they communicated over long distances by shaking their wings in patterns, how each dragon's fire had a slightly different smell, how the very oldest dragons could breathe ice as well as fire. The books say dragons are greedy and mean, Luna said one afternoon, looking up from the third dragon book. Some might be, Ember said thoughtfully. But most of the dragons I know are just big and loud and a bit afraid of things they don't understand. Like people. Luna put the book down. That's actually exactly what people are like, she said. Ember looked at her. Then maybe dragons and people aren't as different as everyone thinks. Luna smiled. It was the kind of smile that started small and then grew, like a sunrise slow and then suddenly everywhere. Maybe not, she said. It was during those afternoons in Willow Hollow that both of them, without exactly saying it out loud, understood something important. They had each been lonely in the same quiet, persistent way, and now suddenly, unexpectedly they weren't. 1 week passed. Then too, Ember's wing was healing beautifully. The scrape had closed over, the swelling had completely gone, and he could now spread both wings to their full, impressive width without any pain at all. He was nearly ready to fly. Luna should have felt happy about this. And she did mostly. But there was a small, quiet part of her that felt something else too. Something that she didn't quite want to look at too closely. She was afraid of being lonely again. She pushed the feeling down and kept busy. The problem was that keeping a dragon secret was becoming increasingly difficult. The first incident happened on a Tuesday. Luna had brought Ember a bundle of apples wrapped in her school jacket. As she was hurrying along the path through the golden trees, she tripped because of course she did, and the apples went flying in all directions. She scrambled to collect them, but she was in a hurry, and she missed one, which rolled all the way back down the path. It was found by Thomas Wheeler, the baker's son, who held it up and stared at the distinct, scorched bite marks on one side. "What made this?" he asked, puzzled. He showed it to his friend Clara, who said it looked like something with very big teeth. Word spread quickly. By Wednesday, the village was buzzing with talk of a mysterious animal in the woods. Old Mr. Fenwick said he'd once heard of wild boar making marks like that. Mrs. Periwinkle thought it might be a bear. Luna said nothing and looked at her shoes. The second incident was more alarming. Ember, who had been feeling much more energetic as his wing healed, had started practicing small, low flights within the hollow just a few feet off the ground, getting his wings used to working again. He was doing a careful glide over the spring when he sneezed. The willow pollen was terrible at this time of year, and a small burst of golden fire shot from his nostrils and briefly illuminated the entire hollow from within, sending a warm glow spilling out through the willow curtain for about 3 seconds. Luna's neighbor, old Mrs. Bramble, was walking her dog along the path at exactly that moment. She stopped, stared at the glowing hollow, and said, very slowly, "H.M." The next day at the market, she mentioned to Mrs. Periwinkle that she'd seen what she could only describe as a very strange golden light coming from the direction of the old willow hollow, which was odd because it was a cloudy evening and there certainly hadn't been lightning. Mrs. Periwinkle told the butcher. The butcher told his wife. His wife told 3 other people. By Thursday, there was a growing sense in the village that something mysterious was going on in the forest near the hollow. Luna reported all of this to Ember with a worried expression. Ember sat very still and listened carefully. Then he said, "Luna, I think it might be time." "Time for what?" "Time for people to know about me." He said it calmly, but she could see he was nervous. His tail was twitching, which she had learned was his nervous habit. "Your wing is healed," he continued. "I could leave tonight, fly back, look for my home, and no one would ever need to know I was here. But..." He paused. "I don't think that's right. And I don't think it would work. People are already noticing. If they find out I've been here in secret for 2 weeks, They'll be more frightened than if they meet me properly. Luna looked at him for a long, serious moment. They might be frightened anyway, she said honestly. I know. He met her gaze steadily. But you weren't. She thought about this. No, she said. I wasn't. Why not? She thought for a moment. Because I could see that you were sad. And scared. And those are things I understand. She paused. And you asked if I needed a friend in a way that told me you needed one just as much. Amber nodded slowly. If people could see that just that, maybe it would be all right. Luna stood up and straightened her jacket. She had a plan-forming look on her face. Her eyes went a little farther away, focused on something only she could see. All right, she said at last. I have an idea. But you'll need to trust me completely. Amber looked at her, this small, quiet, enormously brave girl who had climbed over a wall toward an unknown dragon without hesitation, who had given him her favorite secret place, who had talked to him like he was exactly as sensible and worth knowing as anyone else she had ever met. Of course I trust you, he said simply. You're my best friend. Luna felt something warm and bright bloom in her chest. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she smiled. Good, she said. Because we're going to need the village square, a clear evening sky, and at least 3 of your best golden fire pots. Luna spent Friday at school in a state of intense, coiled focus, barely hearing anything her teacher said. She was composing a plan in her notebook in tiny, careful handwriting. The plan had 4 steps. Step 1. Luna would go to the village square that evening and talk to anyone who happened to be there, which, on a Friday evening in autumn, was most of the village, because Friday evenings were when people sat outside the inn and talked and the baker sold hot buns from his cart. She would tell them that she had found something in the forest and that she would like to show them. She would be calm and honest and ask them to come with open minds. Step 2. She would lead anyone who agreed to the meadow at the edge of the golden trees. She would ask them to stand still and be quiet. She would explain as clearly as she could that what they were about to see was harmless and good, and that she could prove it because she had known this creature for 2 weeks and she was perfectly fine. Step 3. Amber would emerge from behind the trees. Not rushing. Not roaring. Just walking, calmly, with his head slightly lowered and his eyes, those warm, tangerine-colored eyes, looking at everyone with gentleness. Step 4. If all else went well, Amber would breathe his golden fire into the sky. Not toward anyone, not in a threatening way, just upward, a great warm fountain of golden light that smelled like cinnamon and honey and made everyone who saw it feel cozy and safe. There was, as Luna acknowledged honestly in her notes, a lot that could go wrong. People could run. Someone could throw something. Amber might get frightened and fly away early, but she thought the plan had a chance. Because she had one thing going for her that she hadn't had before she met Amber. She wasn't afraid to stand up and speak anymore. 2 weeks of conversation with a dragon had done something to her. She wasn't sure she could have explained it precisely, but it was something like this. When you have spent 2 weeks being utterly yourself, talking freely about beetles and stars and feelings, being accepted completely, not being laughed at or overlooked, a certain quiet courage tends to grow up from somewhere inside you, like a plant that was always there but needed the right light to bloom. Friday evening arrived cool and clear, with a deep blue twilight sky and a few early stars already beginning to appear. Luna went to the village square. It was exactly as she had hoped, full of people. The baker, Mr. Wheeler, with his hot bun cart. Nicholas Periwinkle and her sister. Old Mr. Fenwick. The doctor. Thomas and Clara and several other children. Mrs. Bramble and her dog. Luna stood in the middle of the square and said, in a voice that was quiet but absolutely steady, "Excuse me. I have something important to share. I've found the source of the strange lights and the strange marks on things. And I'd like to show you if you're willing to come with me to the meadow and listen first." People stopped and turned to look. They saw Luna, small, quiet, bookish Luna with her star freckles and her purple ribbon, standing in the middle of the square, serious and calm. "What sort of thing?" asked Thomas Wheeler. "An extraordinary one," said Luna. "I promise no one will be harmed. I have known this creature for 2 weeks and I am perfectly fine, as you can see. But I ask that you come with an open heart, and wait before you decide what you think." There was a murmur. Then, surprisingly, it was old Mrs. Bramble who stepped forward first, her dog trotting beside her. "I've been wondering about that golden light for a week," she said practically. "I'd like to know what it was." Others followed. Not everyone. Some people went inside and closed their shutters. But enough. Perhaps 25 people, adults and children both, walked with Luna across the cobblestones, out of the village gate, across the meadow, to the edge of the golden trees. Luna turned to face them. The last light of the evening was fading. The sky was deepening to indigo. Venus gleamed above the horizon. "What you are about to see," said Luna carefully, "is a dragon. He's young. He was hurt and lost and afraid, and I helped him, and he's my friend. He's not dangerous. He has never hurt anyone, and he won't. He's kind and funny, and he knows things about the sky that none of us do. Please just look, before you decide anything." Silence. Then a rustle of nervous murmuring. Luna turned and whistled softly 3 notes, low, high, low. Their signal, and Amber walked out from behind the trees. He came slowly and carefully, his great green head held low, his tangerine eyes warm and watchful, his big clumsy feet making their inevitable crackling sounds on the fallen leaves. He was beautiful in the evening light, his scales catching the last glow of the sky and turning it into something almost magical, green and gold at once. Someone gasped. A child grabbed her mother's hand. Mrs. Periwinkle made a sound like a tea kettle starting to boil. Nobody ran. Amber stopped 20 feet from the crowd. He looked at them, all those white, uncertain human faces, and he felt his heart beating very fast. Then he looked at Luna, standing at the front, her chin up, her eyes steady. He took one slow breath, and then he looked back at the people, and he did something none of them expected. He sat down. He just sat down, in the way that dogs sit back, legs folded, front feet forward, and looked at everyone with those warm, honest eyes, and he waited. The tension in the crowd shifted. Something softened. Then little Clara, 7 years old, gap-toothed, completely fearless, walked forward 5 paces and said, "What's your name?" "Amber," said Amber, in his warm, crackling voice. "That's a good name," said Clara, and then she smiled at him. What happened next was hard to describe afterward, except that it happened very fast and felt completely inevitable. People began to relax. Then to ask questions. Then to inch forward. Thomas Wheeler asked if dragons really breathed fire. Old Mr. Fenwick asked what the mountains looked like from above the clouds. Mrs. Bramble's dog sniffed at Amber's tail and then sat down next to him quite comfortably. And then, when the sky was fully dark and everyone had gathered close and the questions had begun to slow down, Luna said, "Amber, would you like to show them?" Amber looked up at the sky. He felt the warm thing in his chest, the thing that always came when he breathed his special fire. He felt it now more strongly than ever before. He thought of Luna climbing over the wall toward him without fear. He thought of Mrs. Bramble's dog sitting calmly next to him. He thought of Clara's gap-toothed smile. He tilted his head back, opened his jaws, and breathed. The golden fire rose into the night sky like a fountain of liquid sunlight, warm and glowing and impossible, filling the air with the scent of cinnamon and honey, painting the faces of everyone watching in shades of gold. It rose 30 feet into the air, curled into a slow spiral, and hung there for a long, breathtaking moment before it faded. The crowd was completely silent, and then they cheered. The days that followed were the most extraordinary ones that the village had ever known. People came to the meadow to visit Amber. They brought him food, apples, his favorite, warm bread, a curious collection of offerings that included 1 wedge of cheese, 2 beetroots, and a pot of honey that Amber ate in one enormous, happy gulp. The baker's children asked him questions for an hour. The doctor looked at his healed wing and pronounced it fully recovered with evident scientific satisfaction. Amber, for his part, was patient and generous and endlessly curious about the humans around him. He remembered everyone's name immediately. He discovered that he was enormously good at finding lost things: a cat that had wandered off, old Mr. Fenwick's hat, the wheelbarrow that had somehow gotten itself stuck in the ditch on the north side of the field because from even a short height, his dragon's eyes could see things no human could. He helped Mrs. Periwinkle reach the very top of her apple tree to harvest the last of the autumn fruit. He lit the lanterns in the village square on a rainy evening when the lamplighter's ladder had broken, simply by hovering overhead and breathing a careful thread of golden fire into each one. "He's magnificent," said Mrs. Bramble firmly, as though anyone had suggested otherwise, but through all of this, something had been growing slowly in both Luna and Amber's hearts, like a cloud that you try not to look at because you know what it means when it gets that color. His wing was healed. Fully healed. He could fly, he needed to go home. They both knew it. They didn't say it for 2 more days, because neither of them wanted to be the one who said it first. But on the 3rd morning after the village gathering, when Luna came to Willow Hollow, she found Amber sitting by the spring, looking up at the sky through the willow branches with an expression she recognized. She sat down beside him. For a little while, neither of them said anything. The spring bubbled. A robin sang somewhere in the trees above. "Your family will be worried," Luna said finally. "Yes," Amber said. "They'll have been looking for me." Another silence. "I don't want to go," Amber said quietly. "But I need to." Luna looked down at her hands. She had known this was coming for days, and she had thought she was prepared for it. She found, now that the moment was here, that she was not quite as prepared as she had thought. That big gray sweater feeling was trying to creep back in, but then she thought of something, the night of the golden fire. Standing in the square and speaking in a steady voice. Clara's smile. Interest, Bramble stopped. The look on people's faces when they cheered. She wasn't the same Luna she'd been before Amber fell out of the sky. She looked up at him. "Will you be able to find your way back?" "I think so," he said. "Dragons have a sense for it. If I get high enough and find the wind currents, I should be able to orient myself." He looked uncertain. "I hope you'll manage," she said firmly, with exactly the kind of certainty she hadn't had 3 weeks ago. "You're braver than you think." He looked at her. "You're the brave one." "No," she said. "I think we made each other braver. That's how it works." He was quiet for a moment. "Then, I'll come back, you know." She looked up sharply. "My wing healed," he said. "I know where you are now. And I know where the village is. And I know there's someone here who can show me the stars' names and read to me from books and makes the best chamomile tea I've ever had." He paused. "Admittedly, it's the only chamomile tea I've ever had, but still." Luna laughed a real, bright, surprised laugh. "You'd better," she said. "I promise," said Amber. And when a dragon promises, it is absolutely, completely, unreservedly true. Dragons do not break promises. It is simply not in their nature. They spent the rest of that last morning together in the hollow, talking and being quiet in equal measure, the way you can only do with someone who knows you very well. Luna read to him from the astronomy book the chapter about the constellations visible in autumn, and what the ancient people had seen in them. Amber told her about a particular current of warm air that rose above the western mountains at sunset, that if you caught it and rode it upward, you could climb so high the air turned thin and cold and the stars appeared even before the sun had fully set. "When you come back," said Luna, "you'll show me." "I'll show you," he agreed. In the late afternoon, when the sky was turning the soft amber and rose of autumn sunset, they walked together to the highest point of the meadow, where the grass was short and the view stretched out in every direction: the village, the forest, the hills, and above it all, the white, deepening sky. Amber spread his wings. They were perfect. Fully healed, every scale in place, the membranes catching the sunset light and turning it to gold and green. He looked, in that moment, completely himself, entirely a dragon, entirely magnificent. He turned and looked at Luna. She was trying not to look sad and not quite succeeding. He thought she was the most remarkable person he had ever met in his life, and he said so. She turned red all the way to her ears, which was very satisfying. "Go on," she said, in a voice that was mostly steady. "Your family is waiting." He crouched, gathered himself, and then with a great sweep of his wings, a sound like a thunderclap and a gust of wind that sent Luna's braid flying, he launched himself into the sky. He rose fast, faster than he had expected. His wings were strong, his body light with the relief of going home. He circled once, twice, over the meadow, and looked down. Luna was standing on the highest point, her face turned up toward him, her hand raised in a wave. The sunset light made her look like she was standing in the middle of a painting. The purple ribbon in her braid, the freckles she thought looked like stars, the expression on her face that was both sad and smiling at once, the way really good feelings often are. Amber breathed one last fountain of golden fire into the evening sky. It rose and bloomed above the village, and everyone who saw it came out of their houses to look, and the air smelled of cinnamon and honey. And for a moment every single person who looked up felt impossibly warm and safe and certain that something wonderful had happened here. And then he was gone, a green shape rising into the amber sky, growing smaller, catching the high winds, and finally disappearing into the clouds. Luna stood in the meadow for a long time, watching the place where he had vanished. Then she looked around. Thomas Wheeler had come out of the village gate and was standing at the edge of the meadow. He walked over, slowly, and stood beside her. "That was your friend?" he said. "Yes," said Luna. He was quiet for a moment. "You were pretty brave," he said. "Standing up in the square like that. Not many people would have done that." Luna looked at him, a little surprised. "He needed someone to," she said. Thomas nodded, thinking about this. Then he said, "Do you reckon he'll really come back?" Luna looked up at the sky, clear now, the first stars just appearing, Venus steady and bright above the horizon, just as she'd described it to Amber. "Yes," she said, with complete certainty. "He will." She was right. 3 weeks later, on a cold, clear evening when the first frost had silvered the meadow grass and the stars were brilliant and sharp above the village, something swooped out of the sky and landed with a considerable amount of twig cracking in the meadow. And Amber was back, grinning his enormous dragon grin, his eyes the warm orange of a hearth fire, carrying tucked under one wing a small wrapped bundle that turned out to contain a stone from the highest mountain in the Dragon Kingdom, smooth and cool and shot through with veins of pure gold. "For your collection," he said. Luna held it in both hands and looked at it for a long moment. It caught the starlight and glowed. "It's perfect," she said. This time, he stayed for a week. And the week after that, he came back again. And the week after that. And after a while, the village simply accepted that on certain evenings, if you looked up at the sky above the meadow, you might see a green shape circling overhead, and below it, standing with her head tilted back and a book under her arm, the girl with the star freckles and the purple ribbon, counting down the seconds until her best friend landed. And sometimes, in the very clear nights of winter, if you stood in the right place and looked up very carefully, you might see two shapes against the stars, a small girl and a green dragon, riding the high currents of air far above the village, the dragon pointing out the constellations from above and the girl calling up their names from below, and both of them laughing, small and bright and free, against the enormous, wonderful darkness of the sky. The end.